完了。
Hello everyone, we are Team Hustle Every Day. Today we choose impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on global tourism as our topic of our final project. I'm Leo. I'm going to talk about our introduction of this study. The second speaker is Johnny. He was responsible for the problem statement and methodology. The third speaker is Daphne. She will talk about our finding and result. The last speaker is Catherine. She will explain our conclusion and try to convince you guys to love our report. Thank you. Okay, as everybody knows, tourism is one of the world's major economic sectors. Even there are many popular industries such as chemical, accounting, natural resource, or scientific, to name a few. But it is hard for people to ignore the impact of tourism to the world. Tourism is the third largest export category right now. And we all consider traveling is one of the ways to explore different culture and have a chance to meet new friends. During the travel, we might have some unexpected situation. For example, maybe you will lose your passport in airport, and maybe you will get into the car accident. But the most frightening factors for traveler is pandemic, and even make your original plan become a disaster, and you have to change your plan on trip. The worst is maybe you need to cancel your trip, and the worst somebody would like to choose cancel their trip to avoid being infected by disease. Last year, 2020, the outbreak of new SARS-CoV-2, so-called COVID-19, make the world in a bad situation. Many governments start to focus on this pandemic because it has brought a negative influence to the tourism industry. We would like to do some research to discuss domestic traveler responses. This diagram can be explained like the evolution of coronavirus. The pathogens of new coronavirus are highly contagious and mutate with high speed. As a result, unexpected outbreak can occur at any unexpected time, such as the recent second wave of the new virus SARS-CoV-2 outbreak starting in Great Britain and South Africa. It makes Taiwan's government need to lock off our country. And according to results from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, so-called NIAID, there are hundreds of coronavirus, most of which circulate among such in animals such as pigs, dog, cat, and even the apes. But sometimes those viruses will jump to the human, so-called spillover event. That event can cause disease. 3 of the 7 known coronavirus can cause more serious, even fatal disease. SARS emerged, as everybody knows, SARS. It was emerged in November 2002 and caused severe acute respiratory syndrome. So, severe acute respiratory syndrome is SARS. That virus disappeared by 2004. Then the Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS, is caused by the MERS coronavirus, transmitted from the animal reservoir in camels. MERS was identified in September 2012 and continued to cause sporadic and localized outbreak. The third novel coronavirus to emerge in this century is called COVID-19, which was discovered in 2019, emerged from China in December. And it also was declared a global pandemic by the World Health Organization, WHO. And okay, this picture is epidemic curve of confirmed COVID-19. As we can see, Americas and Europe have many confirmed COVID-19. So it means that there are many people who was diagnosed to have the COVID-19. But in contrary, we can see that Southeast Asia, like Taiwan, there are few people who was diagnosed to have COVID-19. So in my opinion, I think Taiwan can be a model for every country to imitate or to study, because Taiwan is doing a great job on prevention. And this picture is newly reported and accumulated COVID-19 confirmed cases and death. As we can see, America ranked number 1. So the number is whatever. The new case in last 7 days, the number of America is the highest. So as everyone knows, the situation in America, especially California, is very bad. And I think it will make many international students give up their opportunity to study abroad, because we all know that America is the biggest country for international students to choose to start their plan of their future. And next, we would like to welcome the second speaker to explain our problem statement. Let's welcome John.
Okay. Thank you, Leo. And next, I want to explain the effects of COVID-19 on tourism worldwide. We all know that COVID-19 has huge impact on many industries, but especially tourism industry. The tourism industry has experienced sharply falling revenues, and it is one of the most seriously affected by COVID-19. And according to the UNWTO, which is United Nations World Tourism Organization, international tourist arrival fell by about 70% in January to October 2020. And in other words, 900 million fewer international tourist arrival. So it caused a loss of over 900 billion in revenue from tourism industry. And according to this trend, the UNWTO estimate that the international travel arrivals will decrease by 70% to 75% in the whole world of 2020, and this means that international tourism could have returned back to 30 years ago. And next, I want to talk about problem statement. I want to explain what problem that we want to discuss in our topic. So first, as our topic said, we want to figure out impacts of COVID-19 on global tourism industry. So we can divide our study into 2 parts. First, what domestic travelers travel plans before this COVID-19, and how they do for the alternative for the cancellation of this international travel plan. And after discussion in our group, we assume that people who wanted to take an international trip will stay in Taiwan for their domestic travel. And we decided to make a survey and to analyze the and to verify and support our assumption. So next, so we make a survey, and basically our survey can be divided into 3 parts. First, we want to know the personal information and the background of our respondents. And second and third section, we want to know the information about initial international travel plans and alternative domestic travel. So in the first section, we ask the questions about the age, the annual salary, and gender of our respondent. And second, we ask them their destination, what city they want to go for, what country they want to go for their international travel plan, and the budget, and the purpose of the travel, and so on. In the third section 3, we ask similar question about section 2, but this question will focusing on the actual domestic travel in Taiwan. So finally, we got 100 respondents, and 43% of our respondents are male, and 57% of our respondents are female. And about age level of our respondents, 42% of our respondents are 16 to 20 years old. So we can assume this group of people are students. And the second largest part of our respondents is 41 years old to 50 years old. And finally, we can find a student. In our group, we assume students as we categorize our student under this bin, which is 100K NT$. So we got about 45% of students, and the second largest part of our respondents are under this bin, which is 800K NT$. So the resources of our studies can be divided into 2 parts. First is primary data and secondary data. So in primary data, we utilize a Google form to make a survey and distribute this survey on the social media. So for example, Instagram and Line. And finally, we got 100 responses. And about secondary data, we mainly use the resources provided by UNWTO, as I mentioned, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, and WHO. These 2 organizations are reliable data providers. Yes. So next, I wanna welcome Daphne to continue our study. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm Daphne. I'm supposed to tell you guys about the findings and results about our for all of our questionnaires. Um, 点到了，按到了，
你点到那个，你直接点在那个，好好好。
还是你直接用按键盘也是有。
这样。Okay, first is the pie chart we made. These two pie charts illustrate how different genders deals with their initial travel plans under the COVID-19 situation. So as you can see here from the female part, the answer divided into 3 optional choices, which are domestic traveling and shopping and no alternatives. As the result, it suggests about 39 out of 57 females, which is about 68%, who would choose to travel in their native country, which they currently are, and about 10 people, about 18%, choose to go shopping, and 40% do not have any ideas of plans. And for male's part, it shows the proportional of male respondent with total of 29 respondents, and choose to travel domestically with 4 people choose to go shopping and other no alternatives towards the travel restriction condition. And comparing 2 graphs, the percentage of both female and males choose to have domestic plans is about 68%, which is the same. And for the 15% of our female respondents choose to go shopping, while in the male respondent cases, it was less than 10%. So for the category of no alternatives, there were nearly 10% gap between 2 different genders. As a result, that we assume that females tend to go shopping more. And for this linear regression, it shows that the relationship between respondents' annual salaries and the budget they would like to spend on traveling before COVID-19, as this graph shows. And so the result represents that there is a marginally positive relation between these 2 variables, since the correlation coefficient is about 0.16 and its R-square is about 0.02. And the trend line slopes is slightly upward. And apparently the results we got aren't quite reasonable, since in hypothesis, the relationship between these 2 should be highly related. But there are 2 possible explanations towards this phenomenon. First of all is that we think that our database does not have an adequate spread, and for the second reason is that people may choose to do other recreation activities like spend money on investing companies, buying stocks, or anything else. And so for this chart, this shows the linear regression represents the relationship between respondents and their annual salaries and the money they spend on domestic travel after COVID-19 happens. And this results of questionnaire shows there's a negative weak, nearly non-relationship between these 2 variables, since the correlation coefficient is about 0.10, and its R-square is about 0.01, and the trend line is slowly downwards. And same as the last graph, obviously the results we got aren't quite reasonable neither. There's 2 possible reasons to explain towards this phenomenon, which is also just like the linear regression we talked about. And for this one linear regressions, it demonstrates the relationship between the respondents' initial travel budget before the world's pandemic and like independent variables, and for the money they spend on alternative domestic traveling after COVID-19. And the result shows that it was no relation between almost no relationship between these 2 variables, since the correlation coefficient is about 0.08 and the R-square is about 0.0065, and the trend line slightly slope upward. And so different from the last 2 graphs, the result is actually makes sense, because this is as same as the actual analysis presented, since the initial travel budget should not be affected or only has a slightly effect on domestic traveling spending. And there are 2 possibilities to explain this, which is one, that people who plan for traveling to Europe or North American countries before pandemics, their travel budget are normally higher than those who choose to travel low-cost nations. However, there are two options for them to deal with their initial budget: having a high-cost domestic trip or ordinary domestic travel plans. So similarly, for those cases who had low-cost initial travel budget, is the same concept. And we will move on to this. We started to compare following are tons of graphs that were showing to the purpose of traveling before and after COVID-19 world pandemic situation in various age group. So we listed as the follow for leisure, vacation, journey and art of culture, volunteer travel, business trip, and appreciation of nature, landscape, and other. So this is actually the original plan and the actual plan of 16 to 20 years old respondents. Sorry. So your first graph shows that an amount of respondents, about 23 out of 42 respondents, which is nearly 55% of the survey, travel abroad to enjoy leisure vacations as the COVID-19 condition went wild. And the trend of purpose slightly changed of all respondents from alternative domestic travel plans, and numbers of appreciation of Mother Nature increased to 14, and the leisure vacation decreased by 14, and also 6 respondents decide not to have any domestic travel plans. And for 21 to 30 years old, it was comparing to the first graph, the amount of respondents is out of 6 out of 10 respondents, which is about 60% of the survey. Travel abroad to enjoy leisure vacations, and the trend of purpose massively changed. For all the alternative domestic travel plans, and numbers of appreciation of Mother Nature increased to 3 from none, and the 4 respondents decided to have alternative domestic travel plans. And for this graph is about 31 years old to 40 years old, and the amount of respondent, which is 5 out of 9 respondents, which is approximately 56% of the survey. They travel abroad to enjoy leisure vacations, and the trend of purposes changed. Alternative domestic travel plans and numbers of leisure vacation purpose increased by 2 to 7 respondents, and which is abnormal phenomenon under the COVID-19 outbreak situation. And this graph is about 41 years old to 50 years old. The amount is about 12 out of 22 respondents, which is nearly 55% of the survey, travel abroad to enjoy leisure still. And the trend of purpose is significantly changed for alternative domestic travel plans, and numbers of appreciation of Mother Nature increased, and respondents of leisure vacation decreased by 4. And the 3 respondents decided not to have any travel plans. And for over 50 years old, about 10 out of 17 respondents, which is nearly 60% of the survey, travel abroad to experience nature landscape, and the trend of purpose significantly changed after the COVID-19 situation went wild, and the respondents from alternative domestic travel plans and numbers of appreciation of Mother Nature and leisure plans decreased. Also, 6 respondents decided not to have any domestic travel plans. So this is actually the chart a pie chart we do to understand whether there is travel changing how people deal, and how is the COVID-19 influence the whole travel plans, domestic ones. And for we discovered about 47% of respondents' domestic travel plans are not influenced by the COVID-19. And however, still about 53% of plans have been influenced, and they might have switched their plans to domestic travel since they cannot go abroad. So for those who changed these plans, could divide it into 2 groups. We assume that one is those who originally do not have any plans to go travel domestically, but however, under the COVID-19 situation, they have to do so. And after another one is that they have plans to travel domestically, but after being aware of pandemics, they cancel their plans. Since this is another information in the survey, and this is the following pie chart is the table demonstrating the initial and alternative destination of the respondents. Of all people who initially choose to travel abroad tend to have domestic trips as their alternatives for 67 respondents. And over 40% of those choose to have East Coast trips rather than travel to other urban areas. We suppose that maybe one of the possible explanation is that people tend to avoid crowded places such as urban areas like Taipei. So next we will move on to Catherine to do our concluding remarks and all the self-critiques.
So I'm Catherine, and I'm about to explain our conclusions and other information about future directions. So we got 5 conclusions for our research paper. The first one is that as the top choice of alternative plans is to travel in Taiwan for both genders, females tend to go shopping rather than do nothing for their second preferable alternative plans of traveling abroad, while men tend to do nothing as their second preferable plans. And the second conclusion we made is that the results we got from the first 2 linear regression graphs, which are the marginally positive weak relationship and the negative weak relationship respectively, they are quite doubtful because due to the few reasons. The first one is that this can trace back to the database we use. Our Google form, which is our questionnaire, does not have an adequate spread. And secondly, there are some possibilities that not all people who earn a high annual salary desire to spend lots of money on traveling. People may choose to spend their money on other financing or investing activities. The third conclusion is that the linear regression graph of the third one between the respondents' initial travel budget before the world pandemic, which is our independent variables, and the money they spend on alternative domestic traveling after the COVID-19, which is the dependent variables, show no relationship. And the fourth one is that most of the age groups choose to have outdoor activities, the leisure vacation type of the travel, instead of other types of travel as their alternative travel plans in Taiwan, except for the group age of 31 to 40 years old. And we speculated that people prefer to go outdoor activities instead of indoors ones to avoid crowded places in order to follow the regulations of keeping social distance, since the limited space could cause the virus to spread. And the last conclusion we made is that even the domestic COVID-19 outbreak doesn't go as wild as the international situation, people still take precaution when they're considering the domestic travel of their destination of their alternative plans domestically. As for our future direction towards this research paper, for the future prospect of this research paper, we believe that we can try to do a comparison between the COVID-19 situation and the SARS situation on and how they affect on the tourism industry, as there are similarities and differences, and how the world reacts throughout time, since these are two both worldwide coronavirus diseases that have taken a lot of people's lives and brought unprecedented impacts globally. As for the self-critique of this research paper and the process of this project, we processed the real cases from primary and secondary data by utilizing the skills of data analysis that we learned in this course, including the data processing with Excel, making various types of charts, graphs, and linear regression analysis, etc. Thus, we understood the importance and values of these skills mentioned above. However, there are a few things that we need to pay more attention to when we do a research paper in the future. The respondents of the questionnaire need to be more large-scale so that the value of the research will be improved for a great amount. And also, the group members need to have a better communication between each other. And The following are the references we use and refer to in our research paper. And that's all for our presentation. Thanks for listening.